Humans now see other humans as commodities they can sell, assault, and kill. It's been Oloture's journey as a journalist to infiltrate this coven of human sex traffickers, expose them and bring justice to their victims.
As long as you know that this is not a real human, you are only undercover.
But sometimes, even the best intentions can result in one's own destruction.
So much more to the story that needs to be told. I want you to keep this from me. It's everything that has happened while I've been in the house.
Oloture herself became a victim. For the first installment of the movie, there's a link in the description of the recap video. Watch it so you can catch up. Waking up to realize she was back where she had been running away from, being coerced into a reality not of her choosing, left Oloture, who still goes by her undercover name Ehi, terribly anxious. She might not have saved Linda, but not seeing Linda's sister Beauty, whom she helped escape, eased her a bit. Most of these girls were sold on the promise of a good life in Europe, even paying for their own slavery. Somewhere on the outskirts of Benin Republic, the traffickers allowed them to clean up at the gas station before handing them over to a new set of people who then put them in different vehicles. The idea was to switch transportation as much as possible to avoid having all of them together due to the risk of possible attacks. This process went on for a while. Personal belongings were lost and the girls even had to pay $1 to the security agencies that were in on it to let them pass through. Meanwhile, the transient nature of power continues to assert itself. Mr. Antonio, the European buyer of these girls, is displeased with Tony because of the shortage of girls from 15 to 13. In turn, he asserts his power on his underling Aleru for not vetting the girls properly, which resulted in Linda's beheading and her sister's escape. By the way, her sister was helped by a good Samaritan with transport fare to return to her mom in Edo State. The girls made it to their destination where they would rest for the night before continuing the next day, but Ehi still couldn't sleep. The next day, Aleru failed to get any more girls to compensate Tony because they had all heard what happened to Linda. Chooks, the old pimp whom she barely saw as a rival, blames her for the disappearance of his last prostitute. Morning came and the journey continued. Ehi wore her insomnia like a crown because by now she had realized she was swimming with sharks, but not everyone could be. Aleru's free fall from grace worsened as Senator Philip confronted her with the knowledge of Ehi being a spy for the Scoop newspaper. This information was found in Ehi's diary, which had been entrusted to Emeka, whom Senator Philip recalled had assaulted him weeks ago. The only way Senator Philip could have obtained these notes was if he had killed Emeka to get them. Their house was slowly falling apart brick by brick. Seizing the opportunity, Chooks met with Tony to propose replacing Aleru, a position he had initially refused when Tony first offered it. However, Tony declined. Despite Aleru's mistakes, he still had a soft spot for her. But as Tony would soon find out, their problems could escalate. A rival trafficker named Silverblade attacked their boss and even threatened Tony in his office. In the aftermath, only Ehi and another girl named Peju survived. They managed to salvage a few dollars from the deceased before the boss went up in flames. Upon returning to Edo State, Beauty discovered that her mom had died in a fire, possibly orchestrated by the traffickers to hide their secrets. Now free from their captors, both girls tried to regroup in the desert near Muradi in Niger. Since the inception of their business, Senator Philip hadn't had the opportunity to meet Tony one-on-one until now. He blamed Aleru and informed Tony about Ehi's true identity. Here, the senator confirmed that he had indeed gotten rid of Emeka, Ehi's handler, and expressed his desire for Aleru to suffer the same fate. However, Tony couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he spared her life under the condition that she disappears. Meanwhile, the girls managed to hitch a ride into the town and formally introduce themselves. While there, Ehi tried to contact her mother from a payphone, but when her mother didn't answer, she contacted her boss at the newspaper. Her boss broke the sad news about Emeka and informed her that she was now on her own for failing to quit the story, putting everyone's lives at risk in the process. The truth was, she was all she had left, or maybe she and Peju were all they had left. They had made the decision not to return to Nigeria but to make it to Europe by themselves. All around them were people with similar intentions from different parts of West Africa. They approached two guys they had watched earlier play football. They told them their story and sought advice. Initially hesitant to help, the guys later came around. They gave advice and even helped them secure a ticket for the trip the next day, also providing a place to spend the night. Their kindness didn't go unnoticed by Ehi, and the situation didn't deter her from continuing to write her story. The next day, they boarded a bus and continued their journey to a place called Agadez, a gateway to the desert. During their trip, Pedro and one of the guys named Ben grew closer, shared stories and their expectation for when they finally made it across. Ben had lost the dream of becoming a successful footballer, while his friend Andrew just wanted to sing his heart out. Beauty, who the world had taken everything from, retraced her steps back to Lagos, back to the war house her sister had brought her to. Even though the landlady and Vanessa knew her story, they refused to help her. Perhaps her misfortunes were due to the ritual the traffickers had performed on them, and because she had left them, she found herself back on the streets. Speaking of which, Aleru was on the run, but it seemed even her family wouldn't take her back since she had chosen money over them. With no options left, Beauty fell into the hands of Chuks, who promised to help her, but as we know, he only cared about himself. Not even the story of her hardship could bring out the humanity in him. Meanwhile, the trip through the desert faced another delay. Bribe-seeking Nigerian soldiers boarded the bus, collecting $5 from everyone and debossing those who couldn't pay. Ehi, being a caring person, wanted to help the lady, but Peju stopped her. When they reached Agadez, they were welcomed by a friendly Nigerian named Femi, who offered them food and water. Meanwhile, Chuks wasted no time in having his new girl named Doyle set Beauty up for the night's work. The following day, Ehi made another call to her mother but couldn't bring herself to say anything, fearing it could put her mother in harm's way. The only way to guarantee her safety was to break the story. She confided in Femi about her true identity after he sensed she didn't have the same desperation as the others. He promised to help her get her story to his friend, a French journalist working with Al Jazeera. For a moment, things seemed like they might fall into place. Until then, they celebrated small victories like birthdays, working together and sharing meals. The day finally came and Femi took her to meet the French woman. However, as she later found out, there was no journalist coming. Again, she had gotten in bed with another shark. Simultaneously, Beauty was pimped to her first client. While Ehi fought back and refused to be submissive, she was beaten by her new madam. Beauty, on the other hand, wept, having come full circle. They wasted no time in trying to cash in on Ehi. However, she fought back. Aware of her disappearance, her friends launched a search for her, even asking Femi, whom Andrew had last seen her with. He claimed she had gone back to Nigeria, a lie they knew was obvious. As a consequence of Ehi resisting, she was drugged. Emeka would often say she had more bravery than sense. Over time, she had managed to improve where she lacked. She talked her way out of being drugged again, promising to behave. But at an opportune moment with the client, she struck again, incapacitating the man and using his phone to inform her friends of her location. They swiftly arrived and rescued her, but returning to the house was out of the question. She managed to steal some money from the client, which would help fund their journey the next day. That night, Andrew kept her company. The next day, the four friends reunited and continued their journey. Meanwhile, unlike an ostrich that wouldn't hide itself, Aleru got into a partnership with Silverblade to take down Tony, as long as he connected her directly to Mr. Antonio. And Tony, on the other hand, finally gives Chuks the opportunity to redeem himself, if only he could eliminate Silverblade. His desperation to play in the big leagues is fostered when his two girls couldn't bring in sufficient money after the day's work, and he hits them. The desert, as they've come to realize, could be more dangerous than the sea. As long as they stick together, they were moderately fine, which isn't the case for others who got molested by those pretending to help them. They continued their trip. Unfortunately, Andrew got sick. Things got even worse when their truck was attacked and they were robbed of their valuables. During the robbery, Andrew took severe beating, and when they were done, they sent their trucks away, leaving them stranded. Meanwhile, Chuks successfully killed Silverblade, which means automatically he's an agent for Tony. When he asked the street girls to raise their hands if they wanted to go to Europe, Beauty raised her hands with determination. She stated she was going to do it for her sister, and as we know now, her earlier experience was just a tip of the iceberg. The four friends persevered through the desert. Even as Andrew's health worsened, things got worse for them as they got caught in a sandstorm which separated them. Fortunately, they made it out safely, but Andrew wasn't so lucky. He became the inspiration they needed to carry on. After burying him, they followed a noise that sounded like a train but turned out to be a tricycle truck. The driver helped them get to a town in Libya, and he handed them over to his brothers who provided food, water, and a place to rest. But again, it looks like they've gone from the frying pan to the fire. The crossover from Libya to Europe would cost $800, which they were mandated to pay by any means necessary. Failure would mean certain death. Ehi and Peju were able to contact their family members for their funds, but there was a delay in Ben getting his, and he got badly beaten for it. Before Silverblade died, he was able to connect Aleru with Mr. Antonio. Being a pro, she already had his next consignment lined up, and she demanded that he eliminates Chooks, whom she now sees as a rival. Ben's payment finally came through, and the next day, the journey continued. They were transported in a water truck for 2 days until they arrived in Sabrata in Libya, where they boarded the boat to Italy.